All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into something I think is really interesting when it comes to Harry Potter. What got left out of the movies?
Yeah.
You know, like stuff that was in the books that they just couldn't quite get on screen.
Makes sense.
You guys sent in a ton of articles about this, all about these like lost scenes.
I love it.
It's making me want to like reread the whole series again, just to like see what I missed.
It's amazing what choices filmmakers have to make.
Yeah.
You know, when you're taking something as big and beloved as Harry Potter
Exactly.
and trying to squeeze it onto the screen,
Yep.
sometimes what they don't show you tells you just as much about storytelling as what they do show you.
Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
One thing that all three of the articles you guys sent, CBR, Screen Rant, and MovieWeb, all three of them,
Wow. Okay.
they all mention how hard it is to adapt certain scenes. Like things that are totally magical in the books, but just wouldn't work visually.
Yeah.
CBR uses nearly Headless Nick's Death Day Party as like the perfect example.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know about you, but I don't think I ever really pictured that in detail when I was reading.
You know, I have to admit, I think our imaginations kind of like filter things out when we're reading to keep things pleasant.
Yeah.
Because, like, picturing a bunch of ghosts and rotting food all celebrating being dead, I mean, that could get really creepy really fast on screen.
Totally. Like, talk about a mood killer.
Yeah.
What works in a book sometimes just doesn't translate.
Totally different mediums, right?
Right. And speaking of things that might not translate well,
Okay.
Screen Rant really gets into the whole practical side of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Time, money, all those limitations.
Yeah.
And they use the Quidditch World Cup as their example,
Oh, good one.
which, I mean, as epic as that is in the book, can you even imagine trying to film that whole thing?
Oh my gosh, it'd be impossible. And honestly, not even sure it's, like, necessary.
Really?
Like, story-wise. You think about it, even operas, which are, like, known for being huge E,
Yeah.
they still cut stuff out sometimes.
Right.
Whole areas. If it doesn't serve the overall story, it's got to go.
That's a really good point. Sometimes less is more, huh?
I think so, especially with a story as big as Harry Potter.
Yeah, okay. Now, this is where it gets a little more controversial.
Ooh.
All three articles, again,
Yeah.
they bring up SPEW,
Ah, interesting.
Hermione's whole campaign for house elf rights,
Right.
huge EE in the books, and just gone from the movies. But what do you think about that?
Well, I think it might be because, you know, how our society's kind of changed.
Yeah. Okay.
What might have seemed quirky or like a fun little side plot back then now,
Right.
it might seem a little, you know.
Problematic.
Yeah, exactly.
That whole happy slave thing just doesn't really fly anymore.
Exactly.
It's almost like we're looking back through a time turner or something,
I know, right?
and how much things have shifted.
Yeah.
But it does make you think, like, if they were making those movies today, would they handle it differently?
Good question.
Or would they still just cut it out entirely?
Yeah. That's a tough one.
Makes you think, huh? Like, what gets left behind in those adaptations?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh. CBR also mentions that that scene with Neville Longbottom's parents.
Oh, right.
You know, the one where he gets those candy wrappers from his mom in the book?
Oh, yeah. Heartbreaking.
So sad. And, I mean, we know what happened to her. Bellatrix Lestrange.
Terrible. It really shows you the ripple effect of, like, Voldemort's actions, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, the cruelty isn't just aimed at Harry. It's everyone he touches.
Right.
I could see why they cut it for the movies, though.
Oh, for sure.
Way too dark, especially for younger viewers.
Yeah.
Sometimes a tiny little scene can be way more powerful than, like, a whole action sequence.
Absolutely. It's about the emotional impact.
Totally. Okay, shifting gears a bit. CBR also talks about Luna Lovegood's bedroom.
Oh, I love that description.
Right. In the book, it's like this super whimsical space with, like, portraits of her friends that are somehow magic, even without spells.
Just so Luna, isn't it?
So Luna. But, I mean, how do you even film something like that?
Right.
Like, it's magical in, like, its essence, not because of any special effects.
It's almost like trying to film a Patronus.
Yeah.
But, like, Patronus made of imagination.
I think some things are better left to, like, our own minds to picture.
Yeah. Agreed.
Speaking of things that are hard to visualize,
Okay.
Screen Rant pointed out Barty Crouch Jr.'s escape from Azkaban.
Oh, right!
It's in the book, but the movie kind of just, like, skips over it.
It does, doesn't it?
I guess introducing Winky the house elf would have been a whole other thing.
Yeah, and another Azkaban breakout scene.
Right. Like, we already had that in Prisoner of Azkaban.
Exactly.
Plus, do you think people would even care as much about Crouch escaping if they hadn't, like, read the book first?
Probably not. No, the context is so important.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Are you ready for, like, the most heartbreaking omission?
Lay it on me. What is it?
Screen Rant brought up the part after Sirius dies.
Oh, yeah.
In the book, Harry just, like, loses it.
He does.
Trashes Dumbledore's office, all that grief and rage.
All really raw.
But in the movie, he's so much more, like, subdued.
Much more.
That scene in the book, I mean, it just felt so real, you know?
Yeah.
But I get why they changed it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot to ask of an actor that young to, like, portray that kind of breakdown.
And to show an audience, probably.
Especially kids.
Yeah. It's tough trying to balance, like, the emotional truth with what people can handle seeing.
It really is.
Yeah.
Speaking of tough balances, we have to talk about SPEW again.
Oh, of course.
All 3 articles mentioned it.
It's a big one, for sure.
Clearly, a lot of fans miss those scenes in the movies.
It makes sense. It's a huge part of who Hermione is in the books.
Right.
All her campaigning for house elf rights. It shows how compassionate she is, you know?
Yeah. And how she's willing to fight for what's right, even when it's not popular.
Exactly.
Honestly, I kind of miss those scenes. They add a whole other layer to her character, you know?
Totally. It's not just about being smart, it's about actually caring about things.
Right.
And it brings up those big questions about prejudice and, like, is it even okay for magical creatures to be servants?
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about, even if it didn't end up on the big screen.
For sure.
It's funny, you get so caught up in the story when you're reading
Yeah.
that you don't always stop to think about the decisions that go into making a movie out of it.
Right.
But breaking down these lost scenes like this,
Yeah.
it makes me appreciate both the books and the movies in a whole new way.
I agree. It's amazing that these little things that got left out can still make people talk and debate, even years later.
Yeah, it's crazy what gets people talking, huh? Makes you think about, like, all the work that goes into bringing a story to life.
Totally. Whether it's on the page or, you know, on the screen.
Exactly. Speaking of stuff that didn't make it to the screen, NewViewWeb brought up something that I was, like, kind of bummed about.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
The whole Marauder's backstory.
Oh, right.
I mean, come on, more pranks from the Weasley twins' dad and his friends?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to see that?
I get it. They're such interesting characters, and their story adds, like, a whole other dimension to the Harry Potter world.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess, like, practically speaking,
Yeah.
it makes sense they had to streamline things.
Yeah. Adding more characters, flashbacks, all that stuff.
It just gets too complicated.
Right. And expensive, probably.
Plus, can you imagine trying to cast, like, young versions of all those characters?
Oh my gosh, the pressure.
The fans would go crazy if they didn't, like, perfectly match their imaginations.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to just let those legends be, you know?
Keep a little mystery.
Exactly. Sometimes leaving things to the imagination can be more powerful than actually seeing them.
Okay, speaking of scenes that were different in the movies.
Yeah.
Screen Rant pointed out that moment when Harry finds out about his destiny, you know, from Snape's memories.
Oh, yeah.
In the book, it's all, like, internal.
Super internal.
He just processes everything silently and then heads off to the Forbidden Forest alone.
Right. It really emphasizes, like, the weight of what he's about to do.
Totally. But I can see how that would be impossible to film without, like, a ton of voiceover.
Yeah, it would be tough.
And the filmmakers, they actually did something really clever.
What's that?
They had Harry explain his plan to Ron and Hermione.
Oh, right.
So it became more of an external thing,
It let the audience connect with his emotions more directly.
and it gave Ron and Hermione a chance to, like, say goodbye.
Yeah, it's definitely different from the book, but it works really well in the movie.
It does, and I have to admit that scene still gets me every time.
Huh.
Okay, one last omission before we wrap up. MovieWeb mentioned this one.
Okay, what is it?
Dumbledore's backstory. We get bits and pieces in the movies, but it's nothing like the whole family drama in the books.
Yeah, it's a shame they couldn't include more of it.
Right. The whole story with Albus Aberforth and their sister Ariana.
It's so crucial to understanding Dumbledore, you know?
Totally. His motivations, his regrets, all of it. Plus, there's young Grindelwald.
Oh, right. Imagine that on screen.
Maybe it's for the bed. They saved that for the Fantastic Beasts movies, though.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Gives those films a chance to, like, breathe on their own.
And lets them explore the whole Dumbledore-Grindelwald relationship more deeply.
But I do think it's worth noting that, like, by leaving it out of the Harry Potter movies,
Yeah,
audiences maybe missed out on, like, a deeper understanding of Dumbledore.
that's true. It shows how even when filmmakers make good choices about what to include and what to leave out,
Yeah,
there are always going to be, like, consequences.
trade-offs. Well, I think it's safe to say we've done some serious exploring today. Uncovered hidden depths, debated creative choices.
And maybe even inspired some rereads.
Totally. Adapting a book to the big screen, it's definitely a balancing act.
For sure. Tough choices, compromises, understanding what works in each medium.
It's an art form, and
Huh.
sometimes, like, the best stories are the ones that never actually get told.
Hmm.
So listener, we're curious. Knowing what you now know about adapting books into movies, what would you love to see brought to life? And what would you be willing to change to make it happen? Let us know. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Harry Potter adaptation and the magic of storytelling. Until next time, keep exploring.